What I love about a solid blower build is the steps that it takes to get there. It's not as easy as just bolting on the turbo and going. What's up guys? Tyler via ZZP here. Today with another Road to video. Today we're talking about the LSJ. We got a couple supercharged cars behind me. And today we're gonna go over the road to 300 wheel horsepower on a supercharged LSJ. Obviously, it's real easy to eclipse 300 wheel on a turbo car, but there's just something fun, something raw about a blower car. It's what came on the car, it makes it reliable. You can have a ton of fun. Obviously, if you've been watching our video series on the blue car back here, I've had a ton of fun with this car. I really can't knock it in any sense. But realistically, what I've done is gone through the mods in a way that makes sense, that makes the car efficient. I'm gonna use that word a lot today, efficiency. Efficiency is really the key when it comes to a supercharged LSJ. You do have to take a little more care and do a little more due diligence when it comes to the modifications that you make, making sure that everything is efficient and making sure that everything is healthy and ready to go. We're working with a set displacement. We're working with 2 liters of engine and then an M62 supercharger. Now, this is a positive displacement supercharger, so it's gonna put out the same amount of air no matter what. You can't increase that except for increasing the blower speed, which will increase the air. What this means is we're looking to increase the engine's efficiency so that air can get in and out quite a bit faster, more efficiently. If you watch our 3800 Road to 300 wheel horsepower, it's a very similar setup. Obviously, they're working with more cubes. We're working with something that's a little more high strung, but there's no downside to that. These cars are a ton of fun. And when you make that system efficient, when you make that setup efficient, and you're making good power, it can be reliable, it can be a blast, and it can serve multiple purposes. You can go to the track, you can go to the road course, or you can drive to work every day, go out on the weekends, have fun with your buddies, have fun with your girl, your man, whoever it may be. But let's break it down. These cars were rated 205 horsepower from the factory. Now that's crank horsepower, but what we've seen over the years, I mean, we've been dynoing these cars for 2 decades now. Realistically, they make about that 205 on a good healthy engine on our Mustang dyno. Now that's a great start. We're starting over 200 wheel. That's on your stock pulley, which is just below 3.4 inches. You want to verify the health of the engine. Now we all know that Ecotecs have timing chain problems. It's really the one weak link in the system. So what I would recommend, give yourself a compression test. These engines are 20 years old. So whether it needs timing, whether the engine needs a little bit of a refresh, you need to figure out where you're starting from. So run a compression test. Make sure that you have at least 180 PSI across all cylinders. Make sure that that timing chain system is up to date, it's serviced, and that you don't have to worry about that down the line. If you don't know the status of your timing chain system, dive in there, do a timing kit. We have our complete Ecotec timing chain kit, which comes with our upgraded guide, GM tensioner, all the good bits that you need to ensure that you have miles and months and years of worry-free performance on this car. You gotta really string out an LSJ. With a supercharger, you're not making a ton of torque. So what you need is that torque over a period of time. And what you have to do to make good power on a supercharged LSJ is rev it out. And there's nothing better than an LSJ at 7,500 RPM. Say you're starting with a healthy engine. This car, our new Saturn Ion Redline that we got, they are well into the hundreds of thousands of miles, but they are good, solid runners. We've done compression tests, we've done leak down tests, we know that they're there. Once you're at that point, once you've verified that your car is good, I'm gonna recommend first cooling mods. Obviously, a supercharger is a giant heat pump. It's sitting right on top of that intake manifold and it's creating a lot of heat. First things first, check your intercooler pump. We've gone over this 100 million thousandths times. The LSJ intercooler pumps are notorious for failing. Typically they'll last about 40 to 60,000 miles. You can replace the pump. We have our ZZP Stage 1 intercooler pump that outflows the stock Bosch pump. That one's great. It's what I run on my car. Holds temps wonderfully. If you replace the pump and it still doesn't kick on, check your emissions or exhaust fuse. They're labeled EMISS or EXH, depending on which car you have and what year. But check that fuse. If it's blown, then you probably have a wiring problem to your intercooler pump. But from there, we want to address two areas. One being the actual cooling of the system itself, and then two, making sure that there is no air in the system. Option B and dual pass intercooler kit. The dual pass is essential for any supercharged build. And the option B makes sure that you never have any air in the system. The option B kit, while it does add extra capacity in the coolant reservoir, its main purpose is to make sure that that system is bled of air at all times, meaning no air bubbles, no air in the system to hinder your performance. What the dual pass does is the stock system, when coolant comes up into the intake manifold, which is what cools your charge air, it flows in and out 4 times. So rather than running in, out, in, out, in, out, the dual pass changes the configuration and coolant goes in, out, just twice. What that means is there's less time for that air to heat soak that coolant, and it gives it a faster chance to run down to your heat exchangers and cool that charge air. Now on to the actual upgrades in terms of heat exchangers. The stealth heat exchanger is by far the absolute best intercooling mod that you can do on a Cobalt SS. The downside is that we don't have one available yet for the Saturn Ion Redline. S3 heat exchanger on an Ion Redline in combination with that stock heat exchanger is going to increase capacity and, like I said, increase surface area for that air to hit and exchange the heat. On a Cobalt SS, absolutely go with the stealth heat exchanger. There's no cooling mod that's better for these vehicles. Than the stealth heat exchanger. So as the air comes in, it's going to hit that stealth. It's a unit compared to the S3. A massive increase in surface area over just the S3. And then B, your overall coolant capacity is going to be much larger than even the stock heat exchanger. Moving on from there, we'll start to talk about power mods. Once you've got your cooling system in check, we're going to start working from the front to the back on the engine. So a great base place for many of you to start is going to be our ZZP Stage 2 kit. Now why I recommend our Stage 2 kit is, like I said, on the Cobalt SS, the stealth heat exchanger is superior. It's way better. If you're on an Ion Redline, you can jump straight to the Stage 3 kit. It's going to be a great upgrade. Now what that comes with is a new set of plugs, a new belt and or tensioner option. The Stage 3 kit comes with our Stage 3 heat exchanger. Stage 2 kit does not come with a heat exchanger, but like I said, grab that stealth. A PCM tune and a smaller pulley. I'll expand more upon the pulleys in a few minutes as we get down the line there. Working off that Stage 2 kit, we've already got our cooling mods covered. We've got the basis of making power covered. From there, we're gonna work into those efficiency mods that I talked about. First things first, we gotta get that exhaust out of the car. So if you're looking for 300 wheel, I would recommend our long tube header package. It comes with either a 3-inch or a 2.5-inch exit on the downpipe. The mid-leg header could probably get you there, but if you're looking for every last horsepower, the ZZP long tubes are the way to go. From there, obviously, you gotta get rid of that stock exhaust system. Personally, I might sacrifice a horsepower or two and go with our 2.5-inch stainless catback with the resonator, with the muffler, These cars just don't sound great without both of those in line. Now, if you're looking to eke out every single ounce of horsepower, go with the 3-inch. It just doesn't sound as good. But that long tube is going to set you up for success. It's our most efficient header package. It's got the longest runners. It's got a great merge, great collector. The downpipe is great. And don't worry about the cat. I know a lot of people are in that old school way of thinking the catalytic converter can tie up horsepower. But our high flow cats, you don't have to worry about that. So we've got from the engine out the tailpipe covered. One big thing that you need to think about is that air coming into the blower. Upgrade your cold air intake. Both the Saturn Ion Redline and the Cobalt SS, we have our 3-inch stainless intake. Both of those are nice mandrel bent systems. Both of those systems will not only give you that blower whine that you really, really want to hear, and that what makes these cars so worth it, but it also frees up inlet restrictions. Positive displacement blowers really hate inlet restrictions. So when it comes to drawing that air in, we need as little restriction as possible. From there, you're obviously going to hit the throttle body. The stock LSJ throttle body is a good size. It's worked well on a stock car. But what I would recommend chasing these horsepower numbers is the LS4 and our LS4 throttle body spacer plate. And if you're looking to eke out every last horsepower and hit that 300 wheel horsepower mark that we all want to see, the LS4 throttle body is going to be key to that. The M62 and any supercharger similar to it hates inlet restriction. Slap on an LS4 with our throttle body spacer. While you're in there, if you want to do some inlet porting, it's not going to hurt. But make sure you know what you're doing. One last thing before you meet the head of your engine is going to be our phenolic spacer. Now this goes in between the intake manifold and the head, and it isolates that heat from entering the charge air tract into the ports, into the head. Again, it's not something that's going to add a bunch of horsepower out of the box to your car, but it's going to cool down those charge temps. It works very well, and it's a pretty simple install overall. Just take care when you're installing, make sure you got everything lined up, make sure you got the spacers on the bottom, but you want that air as cold and as dense as possible when heading into the engine. Then we get to the engine itself. ZZP ported head, cams, and 82-pound valve springs and retainers is going to increase the efficiency and help this engine breathe so much better. If you caught the last Blue Car video, I did an AB dyno on a stock pulley with just our cams and valve springs, no ported head, and we picked up around 20 wheel horsepower over the previous setup. If you're looking for a good number, absolutely go with our ZZP supercharged cams. The stage 2s, you're going to see a exponential increase as you increase that pulley size, but at minimum a 15 to 20 wheel gain over those stock cams. So not only are those cams going to give you that chop that you want, but they're also going to decrease your boost levels because we're moving that air better through the engine. On my car, I dropped 2 pounds of boost and picked up that power that I mentioned. With that decrease in boost, that means that our intake temps are better, that we're able to run a little bit more timing and ensure worry-free operation across all gears. And like I said earlier, we're working with engines that are nearly 20 years old at this point, so a good, fresh, stiff set of valve springs that are going to hold those valves open and not float is key to making power on these cars. So we've got air coming in, we've got cool air, we've got an efficient intercooler system, we've got some cams spitting that air back out of the engine. From there, it's going to come down to your pulley size. With that stage 2 kit, you get our modular pulley system. Personally, I recommend starting at the largest pulley possible, then working down from there. With a smaller pulley, we're going to increase the RPM that supercharger spins at, which means more air entering the engine, positive boost pressure compared to your stock pulley. A lot of people really love to run with the smallest pulley that they can find. If they can run a 2.8 out of the box, they will, but you might not need a 2.8. which is where one of the biggest things that comes into this equation is HP tuners and a ZZP email remote tune. Our 1.0 flashes for the LSJ are a fantastic base. If you're just looking to go out, enjoy your car with some modifications that you've done to it, a bench flash tune or a refundable core is great. However, if you really want to dial in this vehicle, pick up HP tuners. You need 2 credits. Your PCM will be unlocked for eternity. You can read and write and take data logs and send them back to me, and we can get this thing dialed. Not only can we optimize your car to your fuel and your setup, but also it's a great diagnostic tool. I can tell if your intercooler pump isn't working or if you develop a vacuum leak along the way. I touched on the ZZP Stage 2 kit earlier. That comes default with 60-pound injectors. If you're on 93 octane, that's going to be more than you need to hit that 300 wheel mark. If you're on E85, you're probably going to have to jump up to an 80-pound injector or the ID 1050 XDSs, which, yes, they're a little more money. But if you're wanting to make power on your LSJ, I would absolutely recommend those. They tune very well. They're a couple more bucks, but don't worry about that in the long run when you have a great running car. If you want to get creative in yourself, it's not something that we sell, but especially the inlet porting on an M62 supercharger, as well as the outlet porting, can bring you some big gains. Now, I wouldn't get into that if you don't have experience yourself. Seek someone who you know who has porting experience, but it can help lower those boost levels. I've been talking about lowering boost levels. It seems counterintuitive on a forced induction car that you want to get those boost levels down. But realistically, the M62's efficiency range is well below what a lot of these cars make. So the lower you can get that boost, I sound like a broken record, but the colder the air, the more efficient everything is going to be. Outside of all those mods, your last 1s and 2s that you want to possibly touch on are ZZP neutral balance shafts. Those are going to be one of our kind of last percent mods. If you're already on the edge, you've got a small pulley, cams, ported head, big exhaust car, you're going to be turning that thing well over 7,500 RPM. That's where our ZZP neutral balance shafts are going to come in, and then also the ATI damper. That'll ensure worry-free performance as you wring those RPMs out. Both of those are going to ensure that you're getting every last bit out of the car, every last horsepower. There's no rotating losses that you're giving up to, say, an old worn crank damper or the balance shafts in the case of our neutral balance shafts. The stock clutch, if it's in good health, or whatever clutch you have in the car, typically is going to survive on a supercharged setup on an M62. But if you need to get in there and give it the old classic while I'm in there, jump to our ZZP aluminum flywheel. Cuts the weight of that flywheel down, which means less parasitic loss on the drivetrain, and it makes those heel-toe downshifts just crispy. I think that's about it. We've covered intake, we've covered cooling system, we've covered exhaust, we've covered engine mods, fueling, auxiliary mods. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings here today about the LSJ. If you took anything away from it, make that system efficient. Keep those IATs down. Turn those RPMs. Nothing sounds better than an Ecotec at 75 or 8,000 RPMs. Get a remote tune? Talk with me. Email tylerv@ZZPerformance.com. I love talking about these silly little cars. Until next time, we'll catch you later. Peace.